Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. We have Mock Draft Monday on a Tuesday this week because it is the week of the NBA trade deadline. I'm probably live on the channel right now as you're watching this, so stop into the live stream, say what's up, hello, and ask your questions about the NBA trade deadline. I will be live the entire week of the deadline, so definitely the place you want to be here at Utility Sports. If you guys do enjoy the mock draft today, be sure to leave a like and subscribe as well. And let's get into that video preview. This mock draft, the order is set by reverse standings, which is typical what I do leading up until the end of the regular season. And the reverse order of standings as of February 1st. Of course, recording this a couple days ahead of time, leading up to the NBA trade deadline. And I want you right now, everyone take 1 second, go comment your favorite draft prospect in the 2026 NBA draft down below. Special thank you here to College Basketball Analytics as well for access to their site, and wanted to share it with you guys. So if you use promo code UTILITY over at cbbanalytics.com, you can get $30 off any of their packages, and the 1 month package itself is just $30. So essentially you can get yourself a free month over there at cbbanalytics.com. Definitely recommend using their site. You're going to see some of the graphics, some of the data that they have available today in today's video. So make sure to go check them out. Link will be in the description for that as well. And with the first overall pick, the Sacramento Kings are on the clock, and they kicked off our trade deadline coverage this week in a trade that brought DeAndre Hunter from Cleveland to Sacramento, brought him out west, and in return sent Cleveland Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. The Kings also gave up a second-round pick in that deal to essentially salary dump Dario Saric, and afterward then converted Dylan Cardwell to a standard NBA contract. He's been a huge success story for them. And now Sacramento, who might have a 14% chance at the first overall pick in a loaded draft class here in 2026. Which way would the Kings go? Obviously, the top three discussion between Cam Boozer, Darryn Peterson, and AJ Dybantsa has been such a thrilling conversation this entire draft season so far. And first overall in this mock draft, I have the Sacramento Kings selecting guard Darryn Peterson out of Kansas. His most recent showing against BYU, where he completely lit up the Cougars in the first half, went off for 18 points before pretty much ending his day early. Checked out of the game with 16:30 to play while the Jayhawks were up by 20 plus over BYU, and then did not check back in even though the game tightened up a little bit. Obviously, Peterson's been dealing with some hamstring issues and some lower body injuries and ailments, which has kind of derailed his season to a certain extent when it comes to keeping him out of games and limiting how much we've actually been able to see him this year for Kansas. But when he's been on the floor, man, has he been brilliant. A true, dynamic, dominant three-level scorer, one of the best pull-up jump shooters in recent memory at the college level. Really just a dominant all-around offensive force with his ability to shoot the three ball at a very high clip, very productive and effective and efficient when he's been on the floor, shooting threes both off the move and off the dribble a bit, specifically with the way that he functions in Kansas's offense for Bill Self. His gravity on the ball has been very apparent, but also his willingness to get off of it, run through pistol actions, run off of staggers and pin downs. He does a lot of everything, and I think his translation to the NBA is going to be very smooth because of that. He's very, very good at working off the ball, and even though he's not probably going to assume that role too often, especially if he's drafted by Sacramento, he has the tools to be a build-around player and supplement him with other talent going forward too, which is what has me so excited. Got to show off some of the pop as well vertically against BYU with a huge poster dunk. This guy's really special. He is an incredible prospect, even going back to his high school tape, multiple 50-plus point games, dominated AJ Dybantsa in high school, continued that trend in college. Dybantsa really wanted nothing to do with Peterson. Peterson dominated every single individual matchup the two of them had in the Kansas-BYU game against each other. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see Peterson play against Duke earlier in the year when Boozer and Peterson could have matched up. Peterson missed that game. Would have been one for the ages for sure. But Darryn Peterson that game most recently against BYU definitely is going to help solidify his stock as a surefire top 2 pick in the 2026 NBA draft, and more likely than not the number 1 selection in this year's draft. At number 2, the Washington Wizards are here now, and with Darryn Peterson off the board after an acquisition of Trae Young a few weeks ago, the Wizards, I think, are one of the hot-button teams to talk about because they have a pathway to around $60 million in cap space this offseason. They obviously have Trae Young now in the building, and I think he's a firm believer in the direction this organization's trending. You've got a lot of young talent in guys like Trey Johnson, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline as well with these guys. But the Wizards are trending upward. They could go out in free agency, potentially try and steal a guy like Walker Kessler away from the Jazz through restricted free agency, and then use this pick here as well to continue building up their roster. Second overall, I have the Washington Wizards selecting forward Cam Boozer out of Duke. And this guy, I don't understand the pessimism or the criticism from the eye test crowd. I don't necessarily align myself with either the eye test crowd or the analytics darlings. I find myself kind of in the middle of both. I think there's a lot of value from the analytics. I think you can get a lot of really good insight and perspective. It helps kind of round out your evaluation of a prospect. But of course, eye test is essential as well. You need to watch the games. You need to see how the player moves, how he reacts and responds to certain kind of coverages, defenses. What's his feel look like? There's so much from both lenses, and I feel like if you can't merge them together, if you're only operating from one side or the other, you're going to have a flawed picture either way. And I think Cam Boozer, the wonderful thing for me, he's a brilliant player from the analytics perspective, and I think the eye test is really darn good as well. This guy's incredibly strong. He's got tremendous footwork, a very strong base, and I think out of the top 3 guys between him, Peterson, and Dybantsa, I do think he's the best processor of all of them when it comes to making decisions, his ability to beat double teams, survey the floor off the top of the key. He's going to be tremendous as a trail big man early in his career. He's the best outlet passer in this draft class as well. He is absurdly effective, productive, and efficient, and I don't really understand some of my constituents on YouTube here who question his upside. He's the youngest guy in this draft class, essentially. Why is he the guy that is questioned? Caleb Wilson doesn't shoot threes really at all, doesn't make threes at all really for UNC right now. And yet I hear other YouTubers talking about him saying, oh, well, as his jump shot progresses, as he develops. But then for Cam Boozer, they somehow say, well, you know, his jump shot's a little slow. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to speed up your release than to start shooting threes or making them all together. Cam Boozer is going to be an excellent player. This is going to be a guy who is a multi-all-NBA type of player. To be honest with you, I would lean toward drafting him first overall myself, just because I think his skill set at his size is so valuable, and I do have some slight reservations about Darryn Peterson's health. Now, if I had a complete clean bill of health on Darryn Peterson, which the medicals in May at the Combine are going to give us a better indication of, you know, maybe I would lean the other way. But Boozer and Peterson, to me, are the 1 and 2 in this draft class. I felt that way even before their college career started. I felt that way going into their senior years of high school. And at this point, I still stand by where I was at even 16, 18 months ago with these guys. Cam Boozer's really special, super talented player, and I think a brilliant fit as well next to Alex Sarr in the front court. Wizards fans should be super excited about this potential outcome. Reminder, the trade deadline could shake things up and shake up this mock draft. Now, this Hawks pick, which is the most favorable of New Orleans and Milwaukee, I don't think this pick's going to be on the move. I do feel like Atlanta is going to try and keep this asset no matter what through the trade deadline. I could be wrong, but I would be super shocked to see this asset actually moved. Atlanta 3rd overall, I have them here selecting AJ Dybantsa out of BYU. Now, a little bit of a lackluster showing against Kansas. Richie Saunders did a lot of the heavy lifting for BYU in that game, but there was still a lot of positives from Dybantsa, especially in the second half. I think the first half, there was a big adjustment for him, especially with Flory Badunga being the main primary matchup on him. Kansas and Bill Self, of course, put their center on him, which presented a lot of length and size, made it difficult for him to get to his pull-up jump shot over that kind of size. And Badunga is obviously very versatile defensively, too, with his foot speed at his size. But Dybantsa really adjusted in the second half, started getting deeper paint touches, especially driving the basketball, getting 2 feet in the paint. I think that's going to be the biggest MO for him moving forward. And what makes Dybantsa a superstar in the NBA is going to be how many paint touches, how many deep drives he can get a game. He has some of the best gathers in this entire draft class. Very creative. He has some really good misdirection tools as well. He has kind of that combination of length, size, shift, burst that makes you super excited about what the ceiling could be for a player like this. The issue is, I think it's a little bit between the ears, of how often can he do those things? How often will he do those things? Because even though he has the skills and tools to be an elite driver, he does tend to pick up his dribble a little early. Anytime he's met with a little bit of gap help, he gets off the ball, which I don't mind because at least he's trying to trust the offense. Kevin Young's done a great job there with BYU's offense in general. They're very prolific on the offensive end. They have a lot of talent around Dybantsa, which has allowed him to trust his teammates very steadily this year. But I do think from just an individual creation standpoint, I need to see him not just settle for that stride stop or get off the ball the moment that gap help comes, because in the NBA, you're going to be met with gap help a ton if you're the 1A option for your team. How does Dybantsa score through that? How does he deal with some of those different matchup assignments night in, night out? And I think the more paint touches, the more deep drives, the better. And that was something he finally started doing toward the end of the game against Kansas, but that needs to become his original plan going into games, is how many touches can I get in the paint? How many fouls can I draw? How many free throws can I shoot? From an analytics perspective, there are still some drawbacks to Dybantsa. He's a lower three-point volume guy if you look at his percentage of shots by region, shooting just 18% of his shots from three this year for BYU, from above the break, but still a very talented player. I would love to see him get to the rim even more frequently, just 31% of his shots at the rim this year. I think in an ideal world, once he gets to the NBA, you're seeing about 40 to 45% of his shots at the rim, about 25 to 30% of his shots are threes, and then the remainder are those mid-range pull-ups and those stride stop turnaround jumpers as well. Number 4 here, the Indiana Pacers. Obviously a great year for them to have a down year. Super loaded draft class. This lottery could drastically impact the future of Indiana Pacers basketball in a big way, especially around Tyrese Halliburton. 4th overall in this mock draft, I have Indiana selecting forward Caleb Wilson out of UNC. He is a very beloved prospect, and I understand why, especially if you look at the defensive end of the floor. He is very impactful. He is a stocks machine, and that is kind of the name of the game right now in the NBA. A lot of attention, a lot of emphasis, a lot of detail pointed toward generating turnovers, blocking shots, getting deflections, getting out and running, generating transition offense. And that stuff would work very, very well into Indiana's offensive team design with how quickly they play, one of the best pace teams in the league, especially when Halliburton's healthy. And I think Caleb Wilson, there's a lot of synergy to be had between him and Halliburton. Now, this is still a big question mark long-term about the center spot for Indiana with no Miles Turner anymore. Who is going to be the center long-term for the Pacers? We might have that answer by the end of the trade deadline. So stay tuned on that question. I don't have that answer right now ahead of the trade deadline, but maybe we will have it later this week. Caleb Wilson, to me, though, is a very intriguing prospect. While he doesn't shoot a lot of threes right now, doesn't make a ton of threes right now, you do see some of that shooting stroke. Very similar to even a guy like DeAndre Hunter or Rui Hachimura from their college careers at Virginia and Gonzaga, respectively, where they shot a lot of 14 to 18-foot pull-up jump shots, post fades. Caleb Wilson's got that in his arsenal right now, and I think the estimation that he'll be able to expand his range, consistently knock down open three-pointers is, I think, a pretty safe bet moving forward. I am fairly optimistic on that. Now, I do think there are some concerns for me here from an overall impact standpoint and how great of a player he is in contrast to his teammate Henry Vassar. This is a little unfair because Caleb Wilson is a freshman. Vassar is an older prospect. But UNC doesn't fall off a cliff when Caleb Wilson checks out. They do fall off a cliff when Vassar checks out. First of all, that's the importance and value of size. But Wilson is more of a play finisher archetype as well. He's not necessarily a true creator. And I think if you watch UNC, you see Vassar operating off the nail and being kind of a hub initiator for UNC quite a bit. His impact as an offensive rebounder as well. And then the defensive impact Vassar has, I think, even outweighs Caleb Wilson's to a pretty severe extent too, just because of his shot blocking, presence at the rim, his drop coverage ability. So Caleb Wilson, he's young. I think for Indiana, this is not just a, hey, plug and play immediately. He's averaging 18 points a game for you. I do think there's a little bit of a process here that needs to play out. But with Haliburton coming back healthy down the road, Siakam still in the mix, and you're looking at finding that center prospect or center piece moving forward, Caleb Wilson can be a really nice impact player for them down the road. The Brooklyn Nets at number 5. This is a team, obviously, that had so many first-round picks in the 2025 draft. They've gotten some really good results from some of those guys so far. Yegor Dielman especially is shooting the 3-ball extremely well this year. 5th overall, I have them still going with the guard, though, here in Kingston Flemings, someone who is a very high-volume player this year for Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars, and he's been extremely productive, boasting a very high assist rate, as you can tell from the graph. Very good volume on the basketball, shooting the 3-ball extremely effectively, too, albeit on somewhat of a lower 3-point attempt rate. At this point, Flemings has been a consistent 3-level scorer for Houston and has provided some really solid defensive numbers as well. Very impressive steal percentage at 3.6%, which ranks in the 95th percentile across all of college basketball. He's got very active hands, and even as a guard prospect, a 1.5 block rate is not bad either. So he's been extremely productive defensively. You know, he's very well coached. Houston across the board is one of the best coached defensive teams in the league or in the nation every single year. And then Flemings not only is playing into that and has been productive in that area, but he's also carried a huge load on offense. So I think for Brooklyn, this is the type of player that you'd be comfortable putting the ball in his hands. You know he's going to be a very, very good offensive player for you down the road because of his ability to create off the dribble, get to spots on the floor and score it. He's going to be one of the harder players to get off of his game defensively because he is so adept at scoring on all 3 levels. Even though he's not a super high volume 3-point shooter at this rate, he is someone who is very effective when he does shoot threes at 39%. He gets to the mid-range consistently, very effective at the rim as well. And then he also doesn't turn the ball over a ton either. He's got almost a 3-to-1 assist to turnover rate. So this is a player that I think would be a really nice complement to some of the existing talent. Jordi Fernandez does a really great job maximizing everyone offensively as well. And I think Flemings could be a solid starting piece for them defensively too. At some point, the Nets are going to have to just be a better defensive unit than they've been. Right now, they don't really have the personnel or talent to be, especially with how young they are. But Flemings could be a nice starting point there as well on the defensive end of the floor. Pick number 6, the Utah Jazz here now. Utah, I kind of struggle with this pick a lot because there's a few different ways that they could look. There's quite a few talented players still on the board in this draft, but I think after pick 5, this is when the draft really starts to open up. 6th overall, I have them going with Keaton Wagler here out of Illinois. He had a huge game a couple weeks ago against Purdue, exploded for 46 points in that one. And he's really been able to showcase a lot of shot making, specifically behind the 3-point line, where he's shooting over 43% from 3 this year, and a very large number of those coming off of above the break type of opportunities. Very typical where you would see lead guards, lead ball handlers get their shots from in the NBA. And then he's also been a very effective player in that floater range and getting to the rim at a decent clip. 52 shots at the rim this year, making 67% of them, so 2 out of every 3 go in essentially. Very productive, very efficient, and very effective. Now you do notice that there's not a lot of volume in that mid-range area, and there's not a lot of efficiency in that area either, just 12.5% on pull-up mid-range jump shots this year, which isn't great. But at the end of the day, if there's an area of a game, of a prospect's game where you're okay with them lagging behind a little bit, it probably is that mid-range shot. Now, I do think this makes him less dynamic than someone like Kingston Flemings, who can get on all 3 levels and score on all 3 levels pretty consistently and reliably. For Wagler here, I think there's going to be some growth that still needs to occur and happen. The 6th overall pick is kind of a tricky spot because you could draft for fit, you could draft for need, you could draft for upside talent. And Utah's kind of in a weird spot too because we don't know about Walker Kessler's future. Will he be with the Jazz or not? I'm assuming right now Lauri Markkanen will not get traded. I really like the big 3 combo between Markkanen, Filipowski, and Walker Kessler. And then obviously Keontae George has broken out in a big way too this year. So kind of wing is where you're looking for the need, but the talents here with Wagler at 6, that's who I have them selecting in this mock draft. Pick number 7, the Memphis Grizzlies here now on the clock, and I have them going with guard Mikel Brown Jr. from Louisville. Mikel Brown was a guy coming into this draft cycle that many assumed would be the 4th overall pick after the big three of Peterson, Boozer, and Dybantsa were off the board. However, the season just hasn't played out that way. He's only making about 28% of his three-point attempts, and almost 60% of his total shots are from three. So the pull-up volume and the three-point reliance is incredibly high right now, which has me a little concerned about his creation ability, his ability to consistently draw doubles, force rotations, and then allow your team to play out a drive and kick basketball. Now, listen, Louisville's really highly indexed on him. His true shooting percentage still isn't like horrible. It's at 55% because of how high that three-point volume is. His free throw rate's pretty acceptable, and he is shooting very effectively from the line itself. So if you're looking at that as an early indicator for future shooting success, nearly 81% from the stripe this year. And remember, if you go back before the college basketball season, during the summer play and FIBA stages and everything, he was just unbelievable. So Mikel Brown Jr. to me is still going to be a top 10 pick. He's got very good positional size, some real shooting talent, even though the numbers might not suggest that at this point in time. And again, he's being very overtaxed as an on-ball freshman. He's also dealt with some injury stuff where he missed about a month of the season too. So I think kind of operating with some grace is understandable here for Mikel Brown Jr.'s situation, given the pre-college indicators from AAU and FIBA, and then also just understanding his context right now, what he's playing through, what he's dealing with on the court too. I think all of that stuff matters, and having that in the kind of back of your mind going into March Madness is very important as well. Let's jump forward here to pick number 8. The Milwaukee Bucks are on the clock now with this pick. Obviously, all eyes on Milwaukee heading up to the trade deadline with the news of Giannis being potentially ready for a new home. This pick obviously has a lot of implications as well when it comes to the actual lottery, with Atlanta having the best of Milwaukee and New Orleans picks. But 8th overall here for the Milwaukee Bucks, forward Koa Peat out of Arizona. He's been a huge impact player in the winning process for the Arizona Wildcats this year. Remember back to even the first game of the college basketball season where he dropped 30 points in his collegiate debut. He's been extremely productive, and I think one of the biggest growth areas for him and one of the key developmental areas for us to continue watching is not only his three-point volume, but his three-point make rate. Has shot just 16 above the break threes this year, 1 3 from the corner, missed the 3 from the corner, but did make 6 out of the 16 shots from above the break. So some three-point volume is there. It's not a huge degree of volume where you're banking on him being an awesome shooter early in his career or anything, but I think it's a positive indicator of some growth for him, kind of similar to what we talked about last year with Asa Newell to a certain extent. But I do think Koa Peat, more physical, a little bit stronger, better physical athlete than Asa Newell, and someone who is impacting winning in a big way for the number 1 Arizona Wildcats at the time I'm recording this. He's shooting 72% on shots at the rim with incredible volume. And then also, if you look at that little touch range, the floater shots, 49% in that painted area, non-rim field goal attempts, 32 of 65. So you like where the volume's at in terms of both rim volume and paint volume. Now, the 36 and 36.8% on middies is, I mean, it's something. I'm not overly moved by that, but I'm also not completely turned off by it either. I do think once you get to the NBA and you get analytics coaches who are, again, a little bit harsher on you and have higher expectations because you're a legitimate, true professional, shot diet is subject to change. And for a young guy, especially like Koa Peat, I don't think it's overly worth worrying about at this point, especially since we're probably going to want to dissuade Koa Peat from shooting a whole bunch of middies anyway. But, you know, some semblance of it, showcasing it on film a little bit here and there is not the worst thing either. I am very impressed by his physicality, his physical tools, especially I think at the combine. He's going to measure in very well. I think he's going to hold his stock throughout the entire duration of the draft cycle here. Some players, you know, are great film guys and great analytics guys, but they don't necessarily measure well. I think Koa Peat's going to measure well as well. I think he's going to hold his stock throughout the entire process. Very likely ends up as a top 10 pick, and here I have Milwaukee drafting their power forward of the future after a potential Giannis Antetokounmpo trade this week. The Dallas Mavericks at number 9, obviously another team that could trade away a power forward in Anthony Davis. Again, we'll be talking about all of this live on the channel this week. But the Mavericks at number 9, I have them selecting guard Darius Acuff Jr. out of Arkansas. This guy has been lightning in a bottle for John Calipari, and drafting John Calipari guards has aged very, very well a lot of the time in the past. And if you look at his overall tendencies, you look at his percentile ranks and volume, he's one of the most productive players in all of college basketball, especially when it comes to just freshmen. He is an elite scorer of the basketball, and he's also dishing it out at a very high rate as well. Really solid assist to turnover rate, incredibly gaudy assist percentage across all of college basketball. His points per 40 minutes are through the roof. He is doing a lot of everything. He's making a ton of his shots. This guy is what you would classify as a bucket, but a lot of the advanced numbers like him too. Now, it doesn't really show up in the defensive categories when you look at stock percentage. He's just not impactful on the defensive glass or getting deflections, forcing turnovers, that kind of thing, which that has been somewhat of a tendency for a decent number of John Calipari guards. Not all of them, but some of them. And then you look at his 2-point percentage. It's not in an incredible spot, but the 3-point attempt rate's pretty good. The free throw rate's very, very good as well. When you actually watch him play, you just know that there is dynamism there, the ability to handle out of the pick and roll, draw double teams, begin rotations of the basketball by getting off of it at the right time. And then for Arkansas specifically, you notice how much usage he's carrying. So for Dallas, you're drafting a guard here who you believe can become a dynamic scorer on all three levels at the NBA level. And around Cooper Flegg, there's a bunch of different ways you could go. You could look to get someone a little bit more defensive oriented if you wanted to look at someone like Labaron Philon, who's a year older than Darius Acuff Jr., but having a tremendous season for Alabama. That wouldn't be a bad option, but I would expect Dallas to look into the backcourt here with a pick in the top 10, and I landed on Acuff Jr. in this mock draft. Pick number 10, the Charlotte Hornets are here now at this spot, and Charlotte's one of my favorite teams to talk about presently. I feel like they're in a really great position moving forward. They've got a lot of awesome young talent. Con Knippel's just been brilliant for them this season. LaMelo Ball's been playing some of the best basketball of his career. Brandon Miller's been on a hot streak as of late. I thought they did very, very well, especially in the second round of the draft in 2025, getting Ryan Kalkbrenner and Sion James. This team is in very good position moving forward, especially given the fact they have 3 first-round picks in the 2027 draft potentially. They're just in a great spot. 10th overall here, though, I have them drafting Patrick Ngongba out of Duke. Drafting from Duke worked so well for them last year, they're going to double down on it again this season, and Ngongba's such an awesome pickup for them. Not only is he a very talented player, skilled player, very good athlete, comes from a basketball family, but he knows his game and he does his game very well. Extremely efficient offensively because he has a lot of rim volume. You look at his 2-point percentages through the roof. He's one of the most effective scorers in college basketball from a true shooting standpoint, ranking in the 97th percentile there. Now he does shoot some threes, not a crazy amount, just 17% of his shots come from 3, but he's shooting 26%, so maybe there's some early indicators there for some shooting growth down the road. But I really do think around LaMelo Ball, a screen and roll, DHO hub type of big man could be very, very valuable. Obviously, we've seen Ryan Kalkbrenner and his efficiency next to LaMelo this year. I think 48 minutes of good center play should be one of the biggest areas of expertise for the Hornets when it comes to what they're looking to fill. One of their biggest needs at this point still is more center play. And not only are you getting a center who can screen roll, dribble handoff, go, but he's also adept at making reads off of a live dribble. So he's not just a dribble handoff merchant where you have to hand the ball off. He can feed on the back cuts. You can run stagger action off of that. You can genuinely run real zoom offense if you wanted to. It gives you a big who's very dynamic, creative with the ball. It sets up some small screening actions too, which could be really good with Con Knippel, screening for Ngongba off the top of the key. And then he's also just very good at using his body, getting to where he wants to go. He's got an incredibly gaudy free throw rate at 71% nearly, really good offensive rebounding rate, an incredible block percentage too at 7.2%, which is in the 95th percentile. So he's been unbelievably effective this year for Duke, really dominant. Him and Cam Boozer have been a brilliant front court together, both when they're on the court together and when one of them's off, they've been able to carry their own weight too. So Ngongba I like a lot. Pick 10 might seem a little early compared to other mock drafts, but I'm telling you, this guy's going to return likely top 10 value, and for Charlotte, it's a huge positional need yet. giving them 48 minutes of very good center play between Ngongba and Kalkbrenner moving forward. Pick number 11, the Oklahoma City Thunder here. This is the most favorable of OKC, Houston, and the Los Angeles Clippers. Thank God for that recent Clippers win streak, because I don't know if the league could handle the Thunder getting a top 3 pick this year, so we're going to have to all hope against that. But 11th overall, I have the Thunder taking a swing here on forward Nate Ament out of Tennessee. This is a guy who many expected to be a top 5 selection, myself included, before the college basketball season started. That just hasn't really shaken out exactly in the way that many assumed it would. Now, Ament's still been able to showcase some of his shot-making talent, but it hasn't come in a consistent form where he's going to warrant a top 5 pick at this point. There are still a lot of tools and traits, and specifically from a positive standpoint, I wanted to focus on some of his defensive numbers that I do think point to the value of his kind of archetype skill and size, because he is a very long forward who can shoot the ball, feed in the post a little bit. And then defensively, I mean, he's rebounding the ball extremely effectively as a defensive rebounder with a 17.4% defensive rebound rate, which is very good, over 1.5% block rate, which again is very, very good for a forward type of his kind of length and size, and especially his weight class right now. Steal rate's pretty impressive, 73rd percentile there. And he doesn't foul at an incredible rate either. Now, he does commit some ticky-tack fouls here and there, maybe a little late on rotations time to time. But for OKC, getting a guy who I think has a positive shooting profile moving forward, especially pre-college basketball, like this is a guy I believe is going to be able to shoot the ball effectively. He was drawing comparisons to Kevin Durant, which is never a good thing. We've got to stop comparing young prospects to Kevin Durant. They're just not going to live up to that hype. But for OKC here, he's definitely worth a stab in the back half of the lottery. A guy that I think could provide some real value to them, especially with his length, some of those defensive metrics we shared and talked about, and then also the upside of his shooting touch. If that comes to fruition in OKC, he'll be an extremely valuable player for them throughout the duration of his rookie contract. The Portland Trailblazers at 12, one of my favorite teams to talk about lately as well. I've been really just enjoying a lot of Portland and Charlotte discussion here on the channel. But 12th overall, I have the Portland Trailblazers selecting guard Labaron Philon out of Alabama. Depending on what the Blazers do at the trade deadline here, which could be something extremely huge, maybe not, I think they should be looking into the backcourt for a little bit more downhill creation and dynamism. And Labaron Philon provides that. He has been a super volume player this year for Alabama in the absence now of Mark Sears, who obviously graduated and moved on from Alabama this past year. Philon looks like just an incredible player for them. He's stepped up in pretty much every single way. All of his advanced numbers are up. His free throw rate's through the roof right now. His three-point rate's up even a little bit. His three-point percentage is up pretty drastically, even up to 37%, which ranks in the 74th percentile across all of college basketball. And he's doing this off the dribble with the ball in his hands very frequently. He's got a crazy near 35% assist rate. Assist to turnover rate's very, very high as well. Assist to turnover rate's nearly at 2, which is very, very good. His turnover percentage may be a little high at 13.5%, but not ridiculous, especially given his usage and volume and how much drive and kick Alabama's relying on him for. His usage rate, again, very, very high, but there's a lot of great stuff. And I think one of the best indicators is, even though his assist rate is in the 90, or his usage rate's in the 99th percentile, his steal rates remained very high this year, which was one of his big positives last year, if you remember me talking about that a lot. 2.5% steal rate, and he doesn't commit a lot of bad fouls either. So I think this is a guy who is going to be a top 10, top 12-ish pick in the 2026 NBA draft. I think for Portland here, you're getting a very good player, someone who can create off the bounce. The Blazers shoot a lot of threes. They don't make a lot of them. Now, they did acquire Vit Krejci on Sunday, so maybe that will be the first step in building a good three-point shooting unit going forward. But Labaron Philon can definitely be a really positive addition to an NBA offense. I think the transition game is going to be super dynamic and creative. He's going to be able to get downhill with ease. He's a very, very good ball handler. And I think that specifically is going to allow him to find a lot of success once he gets into an NBA situation with very similar spacing and pace to what he already plays with at Alabama. Number 13 here, the San Antonio Spurs on the clock. This is from their swap option, swap best that they own with the Atlanta Hawks. 13th overall, I have them selecting center Jayden Quaintance out of Kentucky. Now, he's only played in about 4 games this year at the time I'm recording this, and has not been overly productive or effective in those 4 games, but we need to take a step back and look at what he was doing as a 17-year-old playing for Arizona State a year ago. He was absurd. His block rate was through the roof. He was one of the best defensive players in all of college basketball, despite being a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years younger than his opponent on a night-to-night basis in Division I college basketball. That experience, that play that he had at Arizona State should cement him still as a lottery pick, or at the very worst, a near lottery pick in the 2026 NBA draft, even if he doesn't play more than 6 or 7 games for the Kentucky Wildcats this year, because I still think, like, again, the film still exists there. He was very impressive defensively. He's an awesome athlete, very good defensive instincts, really great second jump ability, and the ability to impact and challenge shots around the rim, specifically for San Antonio. Yes, I know they signed Luke Cornett. Maybe this isn't the biggest need for them. You could highlight maybe a wing, but they drafted Carter Bryant last year as well. Like, they don't necessarily need a center, but someone whose impact numbers were this high, and especially around the rim, like, you're looking at a guy who can be an elite spell center for Wemby when Wemby comes off, Quaintance comes on, and you're still losing a little bit of that rim deterrence because Wemby's just an absolute freak of nature, but you're getting a very, very, very awesome rim defender as well here in Quaintance, and all of a sudden now you've got 48 minutes of elite rim protection. You add in Cornett to that combination. This team is going to be tremendous, and they're in such a great spot moving forward. This is another team where everyone else in the league should be praying that this pick doesn't move up in the lottery, because, oh my goodness, could you imagine? But the Spurs at 13, if they take Quaintance here, you're getting a guy who is going to provide elite value in his role moving forward. Pick number 14, the Chicago Bulls here now on the clock. This is obviously a team to watch for at the trade deadline. They have a bunch of expirings. Kobe White's going to have a big market. I would assume New could have a pretty good market as well. Nikola Vucevic has been incessantly in trade rumors the last 2 or 3 years. We'll see what Chicago ultimately does. They were a part of that Kings and Cavaliers trade on Saturday night. But 14th overall, I have Chicago selecting Hannes Steinbach out of Washington. Steinbach's dad played with Dirk Nowitzki on the German national team many moons ago, and Steinbach from Würzburg, Germany himself would be a really great pickup for Chicago for a number of reasons. First of all, he's a very skilled big man, can shoot the ball a little bit, has a very good drop step, good post skill set back to the basket, can face up a little bit and score it. But I really wanted to highlight his rebounding. He is an elite rebounder, ranks in the 98th percentile in offensive rebound rate in college basketball right now, with a 98th percentile ranking at 15.4%, and then a 97th percentile ranking on the defensive glass with a near 24% defensive rebound rate, which is just ridiculous. This guy knows how to box out, knows how to get his body on the glass, and he's able to secure rebounds. Kind of reminiscent a little bit of young Kevin Love at UCLA, one of the best box out guys, honestly, in the last 20, 30 years of college basketball was Kevin Love. And you're seeing Hannes Steinbach have very impressive numbers as well. And he's not just dominating with physicality. He's not just dominating with verticality and explosiveness and athleticism. He does a good job positioning himself, winning box outs, fighting for positioning, and then rebounding out of that. And I think for Chicago, with questions about their big man unit going forward, obviously you drafted Noah Senge, you drafted Matas Buzelis. Those are two kind of wiry forwards. You might need a guy who's an elite box out big to help those guys sky in and grab rebounds above the rim. Steinbach could be very valuable in that regard. And then he's also a very creative offensive player. Gets to the free throw line a good amount, nearly 45% free throw rate. Solid usage as well for UW this year. And honestly, I think very surprising stock numbers. Even over 3% block rate, which is a little bit better than I was expecting him to be at this year. And then nearly a 2% steal rate as well. So active hands, good anticipation skills. He doesn't commit a ton of fouls either. So for Chicago, every single pick is going to be super crucial for them to hit on. I think Steinbach is going to return very good value, especially at this spot of the draft. 14th overall, I like this pick for the Bulls. Pick number 15, the Miami Heat here now. Who knows what Miami will do at the trade deadline? They have Terry Rozier's huge contract there's going to be a lot to watch for with the Miami Heat, but 15th overall, I have them selecting guard Brayden Burries out of Arizona. Started the year a little slow, but has been real money the last 12 to 15 games for the Arizona Wildcats. Remember, they're number one in the nation for a reason, and this kid's been absolutely dominant on the offensive end of the floor as of late as well, shooting over 41% on above-the-break threes, 42% on mid-range jump shots. Now, that floater range has been a little bit of a weak point for him where he's just at 37.5%, but when he does get all the way to the rim, he has been butter. 77% at the rim this year as a guard, especially as a true freshman guard, is so impressive. I think that's going to be one of the best selling spots for Brayden Burries moving forward, especially if that kind of continues throughout March Madness, especially for Miami, who's running less plays than normal. Eric Spoelstra is about spacing and pace and trying to get up and down the floor, get easy shots, spreading the defense out. Bam Adebayo's three-point volume has gone through the roof this year. If the paint's open and Brayden Burries can get to the rim consistently in a situation like Miami, it's going to be a really great option for him, an opportunity for him to score the ball very consistently and efficiently and effectively at the NBA level early on. They drafted Kasparas Jakučionis last year, who I liked Jakučionis a lot as a prospect, but I do have questions about his long-term fit in Miami given the absence of ball screens to a pretty severe rate. And who knows what Miami does. Obviously, they could still make a huge trade. Maybe Giannis finds his way to Miami. Who really knows? But Brayden Burries is such a talented player, and I think specifically the fit here actually does make a lot of sense if Spoelstra and the Heat carry over their playing style into future seasons. The Memphis Grizzlies here at 16. This is the best between Suns and Magic. The Magic have kind of stumbled a little bit this year in the first year with Desmond Bane in the mix, and the Grizzlies are in a spot to benefit from that. 16th overall here, I have them selecting forward Dailyn Swain out of Texas. This has been a really fun prospect to watch. Former Xavier product is having a great year for the Texas Longhorns. One of the biggest growth points for him is that three-point shooting. Now, it's not at an elite clip, not even close to that quite yet, but we've seen a continued growth from him year over year now in his junior season in college basketball, shooting over 32% from three this year, and his three-point attempt rate's the highest it's been yet as well. Shooting 66% true shooting percentage, gets to the line a very good amount for a forward, especially someone who handles the ball as much as he does, and does a little bit of everything. I've been seeing comparisons to Najee Marshall. Shout out to MCFX NBA, Muhammad over on Twitter. Appreciate him a lot. He always posts some really great stuff about these prospects. Saw him compare Dailyn Swain to Najee Marshall, and I think that there's a lot of similarities there in the play style in terms of a forward who can play make, create off the bounce a little bit, score the basketball on multiple levels. Dailyn Swain's a really good player. This is the type of guy that I could see Memphis falling in love with, trying to build up a bigger unit next to Cedric Coward, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey. Dailyn Swain can take on some of that ball handling responsibility, those creation aspects. And Memphis, who's already had another pick earlier in this draft, they walk away with another very skilled player here at number 16 in Dailyn Swain. Pick 17, the Golden State Warriors here now. Who knows what's going to happen with them? Jonathan Kuminga, Jimmy Butler, two guys who I think could both realistically get traded because of Butler's injury, Kuminga's drama, and trade demand, even though there's not a lot of demand for him, according to Mike Dunleavy Jr., which was a very interesting open mic quote. But 17th overall, I have the Warriors selecting guard Bennett Sturtz out of Iowa. Also an interesting note, Steve Kerr's future in Golden State, I think, is up in the air at this point. But assuming Steve Kerr comes back, a guy like Bennett Sturtz who knows how to initiate offense, knows how to run a system, could be very useful for their half-court offensive efficiencies. Now, it would be a pretty drastic play style change for Sturtz in terms of the pace. Iowa's one of the slower Division I college basketball teams, and Drake was last year as well under Ben McCollum with Bennett Sturtz playing point guard. But Sturtz, even in a slow-paced setting, is absurdly efficient on all three levels, shooting the three ball, again, very, very effectively this year. He's an elite mid-range scorer. The paint volume a little lower than where you'd want it to be, especially adjusting to his first year in a power conference, but his rim numbers are still elite as well. He's a super high minute per game guy at 36 minutes per game. He's one of the best conditioned athletes in this entire draft class. And 17 is honestly too low for him. If I was drafting, he'd be much higher. So the hard thing about mock drafts is it's not where I would take him, it's where I expect them to get drafted. I do think Bennett Sturtz is going to be a little underdrafted in this year's class, but he's a very, very good player. And I do think if Steve Kerr's back next year, the half-court offense would see a significant boost with Bennett Sturts on the basketball, creating offense for them, kind of running the show, directing traffic to a certain extent. He's very NBA ready. I think night one, he'd be ready to play 28 to 32 minutes a game as an NBA point guard. Now, will he get that opportunity? Maybe not, but you're looking at someone who's going to return elite value once drafted in the NBA in 2026. The OKC Thunder back on the clock. Remember, they went with Nate Ament at pick 11. And at number 18 here, I have them selecting wing Cameron Carr out of Baylor. I chose to share his shot chart here because I think this is very role player coded. Not a good paint shooter, not a good mid-range shooter, but really good volume three-point numbers and elite volume and efficiency at the rim for a wing. Nearly 78% of the rim. That, of course, is a byproduct of his athletic tools, his ability to function as a cutter, transition play finisher, and advantage finisher, and then also his ability to run off of screen, something Scott Drew's done a good job channeling his offense toward this year with Cameron Carr, flying off of staggers and pin downs and wide action to get him the ball out in space. He exhibits very, very good range, ability to shoot the three ball with some significant distance. I don't think there's going to be really any adjustment period to the NBA three-point line for Cameron Carr. He's got great range, and again, for OKC, you're not drafting someone to be the guy. You're not drafting someone to be the number one option. You're looking for, in my opinion, more shooting. You're looking for play finishing. You're looking for cutting and athletic tools. Cameron Carr checks pretty much all of those boxes for you. And at 18, maybe it's a little high for where Cameron Carr could go, but I do think this is a very, very good fit and gives a team that could use even more athleticism, knows how to channel that athleticism into success. He just checks a lot of the boxes for what Mark Daigneault could really employ on both ends of the floor. Pick number 19, the Atlanta Hawks on the clock. Again, remember they had the third overall pick earlier, drafted AJ Dybantsa out of BYU, and now 19th overall in what is the second most favorable of Hawks, Spurs, and Cavs, which is a swap they picked up from their own DeAndre Hunter trade last year. I have them at this spot selecting center Chris Sinak Jr. out of Houston. So the second Houston Cougar to go in this first round mock draft. And this is very good value, especially if you consider where Chris Sinak Jr. was expected to get drafted prior to the college basketball season. This was someone who many anticipated to be a top 10 pick. Now I do have him a little bit lower because if you look at his shot chart, I mean, there's just a lot of mid-range volume here for a center. And you know, in the NBA, again, I don't think that this will hold up this way, but his touch, his mid-range post scoring, the post fades, the turnaround shots, like that is something that Houston's utilizing right now. I don't think that holds a lot of weight in terms of NBA evaluation for his skills and tools, other than the fact that he's a very good touch finisher. You look at his rim volume, just 19% of his shots this year have come at the rim, but he's 27 of 30 on shots at the rim. So he's shooting 90% when he actually takes shots at the rim. So he's very effective when he's there. I just want to see that volume tick up. And then also, the three-point volume, 22% of his shots have come from above the break on threes. But again, he's shooting very effectively from there, over 35% on above the break threes. And on threes in general this year, he's 19 of 48 for nearly 40%. So he's been very productive. And if we can shy away from the bad long twos and the non-rim paint twos a little bit and get him to more of an NBA-ready shot diet of more threes, more rim, which is what I think we're going to see as he develops and grows and blossoms as a player, he can provide really awesome value. And for Atlanta, who has Kristaps Porzingis as an expiring salary right now, they are going to be looking for some center play. Adding both Dybantsa and Chris Sinak Jr. in one draft class is going to be an awesome return for the Hawks in the 2026 class if it pans out this way. Pick number 20, the Toronto Raptors here now. This is one of my favorite mocks in this entire mock draft. 20th overall, I had them selecting at center Henry Vesar out of UNC. This is an elite player. This is someone who is one of the most underrated players in the entire draft. His net rating numbers are ridiculous. With him on the court this year, UNC is 27.2 points per 100 possessions better than their opponent, but with him off the court, they're nearly 10 points per 100 possessions worse than their opponent, which is a near 40-point swing. In fact, it's a 36.8 net rating swing, which is very drastic. And a lot of it stems from that defensive rating, where with him on the court, UNC per 100 possessions is allowing just 97.2 points per 100. And with him off the floor, it completely balloons to 122.9 points per 100 possessions. Their offense is also drastically better with him on the court. And if you watch them play, it's not questionable why. He handles the ball, he can be a playmaking hub, he initiates offense, and he can also hit back cuts extremely well, which is what gets Caleb Wilson a lot of easy finishes. This is a perfect fit for Darko Rajakovic. This is a tremendous option for Toronto, who's obviously very predicated on ball movement, swinging the ball side to side, forcing rotations, forcing closeouts. And I think Vesar's passing off the top of the key, his ability to flow into dribble handoffs, would be just awesome here in Toronto with the other existing talent. If you like Vesar's fit with Caleb Wilson, which has been great, I think his fit next to Colin Murray-Boyles and Scotty Barnes going forward is also very, very, very good for the long-term future of the Raptors. Pick 21, the Charlotte Hornets here now. This is the worst of Phoenix, Washington, Orlando, and Memphis. And with this pick, I have them selecting forward Yaxel Lendeberg out of Michigan. One of my big key areas of growth for Charlotte the last couple of years has been just getting more NBA rotation caliber players, guys who are meaningful top 8 players on quality teams. And Yaxel Lendeberg checks a lot of those boxes. He's big, strong, physical, can protect the rim a little bit as a forward, rebounds the piss out of the basketball. Like, this guy's really, really useful. Now, the three-point volume's up, the three-point success rate's up. Is he going to be a good three-point shooter in the NBA? Probably not. But he works his tail off. He's very productive, carries a lot of offense, did so last year at UAB, and has just been brilliant for Michigan as well this year. So this is a guy who, at 21, honestly might be a little low for him in a mock draft, but he's just been so productive. If you look at their net rating with him on, they're outscoring opponents by 36.3 points per 100 possessions. He is just so good and such a huge part for them. And then defensively as well, their team defensive rating with him on the court is just insane. Now, he does have some other complementary bigs in the front court next to him. Merez Johnson, Ade Mara, both very, very good players as well in their own right. So it's not like it's only Yaxel Lendeberg there in Michigan. But he's been a key reason why the Wolverines have been as good as they have been this year. They've dominated their minutes with him on the court. And he's going to be a quality player in the NBA, and I think Charlotte would do well adding him into their front court long-term, especially with some of the questions about the long-term future there in Charlotte around Josh Green and Grant Williams and some of their other shorter-term contracts they have in the mix. Pick 22, the Los Angeles Lakers. This would be a team I would love to see get Henry Vesar, but with him off the board to Toronto at number 20, I have the Lakers instead selecting forward Tunde Yesufu from Baylor. And this is kind of a project selection, but it's about the athletic tools and physical traits that he possesses. He's been somewhat inefficient this year, just shooting 30% on threes, 55% on twos, but one of his greatest areas of skill is finishing at the rim, where he's at 71% nearly on shots at the rim this year, which is very solid for a wing. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Cam Whitmore pre-draft, where the playmaking feels just not there, but there is some scoring talent and it can come in bunches for him. I think next to Luka Doncic, you're looking at him kind of exhibiting and functioning as a play finisher. Now, is this the best way to build your team? Probably not, but I think it would be hard for the Lakers and for Rob Pelinka to pass on some of the talent, physical tools, and upside. From a physical body perspective, he does look like Anthony Edwards on the court a little bit, just in terms of his body composition, physical makeup, strength, muscles, all of that stuff. Now, from a skill set perspective, he does not look like Anthony Edwards. But part of the eye test issue, and this does apply, I think, certain guys, when they look like certain players on the floor, that tends to be the lasting impact that they have on people's minds. So could Tunde Yesufu go higher than 22 in the draft? Very likely he will. Now, I'm a little bit lower on him myself than others, but I do understand a lot of the appeal, and I think he is an interesting player to say the least. Pick 23, the Minnesota Timberwolves here now. This is the less favorable of Utah and Minnesota from the Rudy Gobert trade. And at 23, I have them selecting forward Kareem Lopez, who had one of his best games of the NBL season very recently for the New Zealand Breakers, where he completely took over in the second half. Really strong showing from him. I still think the biggest area of interest for me and intrigue for him as a prospect is his passing and playmaking off of a live dribble. Because at his size, with his length and wingspan, like there is some real on-ball skill there for him to kind of play with. And the Wolves, who have been so desperately looking for point guard play, we might see them trade for Kobe White here at the deadline, or pick up someone like Javon Carter, who was just released by Chicago. Like Minnesota, with their need for more playmaking around Ant, one of the biggest issues is which point guard is valuable enough to acquire, or who is your point guard that you want that doesn't need to be on the ball consistently. And if they can maybe address that by finding a forward like Kareem Lopez who has some playmaking tools, maybe that can be the long-term solution where you kind of slide Ant naturally into that point guard spot, even though it might not be the A-plus best outcome. Maybe if you just surround him with length and size and some more playmaking juice on the wings, maybe you can get by that way. And, Minnesota's been really close, back-to-back Western Conference Finals berths. We'll see where they go, but Kareem Lopez, definitely a skilled player who could help them in that playmaking department. Pick 24, the New York Knicks here now. First year under Mike Brown, some ups and downs for sure. We'll see what they do at the deadline, but at 24, I have them selecting Nicholas Abdulas from Virginia Tech. Now, his season is mirroring very closely to what Yegor Dioman had last year at BYU in terms of efficiency, production, the shot chart, the shot diet, all of that stuff. But I'm not sure if there's going to be as much intrigue for Abdulas in contrast to Dioman because, Abdulas, I think the overall tape's a little bit worse. I think the athletic profile is a little bit worse, and I'm not sure if he's going to shoot it as effectively as Dioman did during pre-draft workouts and the NBA draft combine itself. But this is still a player that's going to probably get drafted first round. There's not a lot of times where there's a 6'7", 6'8" guard who plays on the ball a ton in college that doesn't end up garnering first round looks, especially if he is somewhat skilled. And Abdulas is a guy who does that and has been that for Virginia Tech now. The last 4 or 5 games for him, especially in ACC play, has been very, very poor, very inefficient. I believe he shot 1 of 8 against Duke earlier this past week. But, he's not, again, Dioman had those same struggles for BYU where he just wasn't efficient and effective in Big 12 play. GMs and scouts were willing to look past that, ended up getting drafted 8th overall. Abdulas, even though I don't think he should warrant a top 20 pick, it's still possible that he could, and New York here, even in this mock draft, stops his fall at number 24. The Boston Celtics at number 25 here. Very interesting situation. They could trade Anthony Simons. We'll see which way they go. Kind of difficult for me to land on a mock selection for them because they might not even have this pick, but I don't know who's going to be on the roster even if they do. 25th overall, though, I landed on guard Braylon Mullins out of UConn. I think for Joe Mazzulla specifically, and something that Brad Stevens is going to value for him, is some more shooting talent, someone who can be a functional off-ball player, both as a small screener, using him as a ghoster, or a screener to force switches. You can have him flying around off of action like Dan Hurley does at UConn. Just an incredible three-point attempt rate, 63%, and he's making a lot of them too at 38%. So you're looking at one of the higher percentile shooters in the entire draft class. Very good early indicators as well pre-college basketball when it comes to his shooting metrics and numbers. Really great touch, fantastic footwork and mechanics on his release, in my opinion, where there's going to be minimal to no changes from a coaching staff. Now, they always find a way to tweak something. Grady Dick, even, who was a great pre-NBA shooter, had tweaks on his shot once he arrived to Toronto. But for the most part, I think Braylon Mullins is pretty obvious, like plug and play into a system. And Brad Stevens is going to probably value that once again for Joe Mazzulla. Those two have been working in lockstep, finding shooting, finding talent to put around their core. And Braylon Mullins could be a guy who is a complimentary pick there, especially the late first round. You're going to get him on a 4-year contract where he's making just a fraction, a very small fraction of the salary cap as well, which is important for Boston at this point in time. Pick number 26, the Oklahoma City Thunder here. This is the second most favorable of OKC, Houston, and their own pick, the Clippers pick, and then Isaiah Evans is the mock selection here. Now, you can tell I've gone very shooting-oriented in this mock draft for OKC. I still think their biggest weakness is three-point volume and making three-pointers against zone. And Isaiah Evans is one of those zone murderers, zone beaters. You don't want to run zone against this guy because he's just going to spot up on a wing, and the moment that somebody leaves him, the ball's going to find his hands and he's going to knock it down. Now, I know this year he's not shooting a great clip from three, just a little bit over 33%. So you might look at this and say, what? if you watch the games, you understand the way this guy gets covered. He's got some of the best off-ball gravity in all of college basketball. And this guy is an NBA caliber player. Now, is he going to be a very good NBA player? Probably not. He's probably going to be in my mid-20s on my board if I had to guess. Now, nothing's finalized yet. Things are going to shift and change. Maybe he could go a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. But he's definitely a talented player. And with his shot-making talent and the ability to shoot over certain kinds of contests and the amount of attention he draws running off of flares and ghosts and everything, this is a guy where you put him into your offense, he's going to draw attention and he's going to cause confusion and conflict at the point of attack as a ghost screener, run him off flares, staggers, pin downs, floppy action even, whatever you want to do. He could be an awesome flex screener. He can be a tremendous Spain screener, Ram screener, Peja action. I mean, there's just so much stuff that Isaiah Evans can provide to an offense, let alone just sprinting out ahead in transition and getting catch and shoot threes from the corner. So elite volume three-point shooter. There are a lot of concerns, but he shot the ball at the rim very well this year on, albeit extremely low volume, like just a little bit over one rim attempt per game. But really solid player still, and a guy who I think his gravity alone should get him drafted this year. The Cleveland Cavaliers at pick number 27. This is the least favorable of Cavs, Spurs, and Hawks. 27th overall, I have them selecting center Ademara from Michigan. This is kind of a big one-trick pony for them defensively. He is going to play in super deep drop, and he's going to deter the rim. And that's super valuable for when either Jared Allen's out or Evan Mobley's out, if either of them are missing games or throughout your regular substitution patterns. This is a very big, very cheap, cost-controlled center option off the bench because you're getting him on a 4-year rookie contract at the end of the first round. And that is valuable for Cleveland right now, who's in the process of making salary dumps and trying to shave every penny off their roster that they possibly can while keeping their main core intact, presumably. And then the nice thing about Mara is he's capable of doing some really nice stuff on offense. Many years ago, I thought he was going to be a potential top 5 pick. Just hasn't really shook out that way. UCLA didn't really play into that style for him. But I think he's found a home in Michigan where we get to see his strengths on display more frequently. Just an incredible block rate at 12.5%, 99th percentile in the nation. Doing that in the Big Ten is incredible. He's an awesome rebounder. He's so big and large that he gets fouled at an incredible rate, 91st percentile free throw attempt rate at 64%. And then he can pass the ball to the post as well. He's got very good feel and touch when delivering as a passer. Now, is that something you're going to run your offense through and he's going to average 8 assists a game? No, but I think it's functional for 4 to 6 minute bursts at times where, hey, we can run post splits, you can feed him, you can go DHO, chin action, blind pig, that kind of stuff. So a lot of different options, but Ademara, very skilled, huge block shots, tremendous player that if you get him at 27, I think is elite value in this class. Pick number 28, the Denver Nuggets here now. At this spot, I have them selecting guard Christian Anderson out of Texas Tech. And I know someone in the comment section is going to be driving themselves crazy right now saying, oh my gosh, how did Christian Anderson go this late in the draft? First of all, this is not what I would do. This is what I would anticipate to happen. Jalen Brunson was a second-round pick. Small guards do not get a lot of love. And I talked about it earlier with Koa Peat as someone who's going to measure well and he's going to maintain his value throughout the entire draft cycle, including the combine. Everyone loses a little bit of value when we get to the combine measurements, and if you measure in at 5'11 or 6 foot, 6'1", someone like Tyler Tanner out of Vanderbilt is going to deal with the same situation, unfortunately. And skilled players don't always go high in the draft. Christian Anderson, very, very skilled, very, very talented. He's short. He's shorter than a lot of other guys in this class, and that is going to unfortunately hurt him, even though the numbers look insane. You look at his assist rate, through the roof, near 34%. Look at his assist to turnover rate, 2.5 to 1 turnover. It's incredible. Three-point attempt rate, through the roof. Nearly 60% of his shots are threes, which is fun. A lot of it's pull-up volume creation, and he's shooting almost 44% from three. So you look at all this stuff, and you say, why is this guy not like a top 10, top 14 pick? Well, it's because he's shorter. And even though that's unfair, there are some concerns there. Like, I mean, you look at the turnover rate, near 17% turnover rate, which is pretty high. I do think that is a little bit of a byproduct of his size in general. Now, it doesn't mean he's not a great player. He's been dominant for Texas Tech at times. He's been an elite college basketball player. The other thing about this, Christian Anderson is going to get a bag in NIL. We've seen a lot of really good college players not come to the NBA draft because they're getting such massive offerings in NIL. Last year, Axel Lindenberg was a great example of that. Obviously Bennett I thought would have been a lottery pick last year too. He chose to stay in college basketball, go with Ben McCollum to Iowa. Didn't even really push for the NBA draft. So, Christian Anderson could potentially be in that case, in that camp as well this year for Texas Tech. But he's really dynamic, really dominant in college basketball. And I would love to see him in the NBA soon. Pick 29, the Detroit Pistons here now. I have them selecting forward Alex Karaban out of UConn. Very possible Detroit gets aggressive and actually trades this pick this week. We'll see what they do and how they look to improve their roster, both short and long term. But if they do hold on to this pick, Karaban is a winner. This is the type of guy that makes a lot of sense as a fit next to Jalen Darryn, next to Isaiah Stewart long term, next to Cade Cunningham. This guy knocks down open shots. He's a connective player, connective passer. He's shooting a career best 42% from three this season with a really solid, respectable three-point attempt rate around 44%, making 85% of his free throws, near 60% true shooting. And he's a part of, again, a really dominant Connecticut team where UConn's won 2 national championships with Karaban on the roster. They might win a third this year. Who knows? They've been really, really good. His RAP-M numbers are awesome again. Last year, I said it the entire mock cycle last year. I said this guy's getting overlooked right now because he's over-indexed, overtaxed. This guy, if he's not a first-round pick, he's going to probably be one of the biggest steals of the second round. This guy should be a first-round grade for pretty much everybody, but he won't be because he's a little bit older and because his play style is not super exciting. Although when we get into the actual NBA season, exciting doesn't always win. Reliable, consistent, effective, efficient wins. And I would use all of those words to describe Alex Karaban, who, especially when he played around Donovan Clingan, was a stocks machine too. Detroit's getting a really good player here in Karaban who can play the 3 or 4 for you, gives you a little bit of lineup versatility in the front court, some playmaking, some connective passing, and can really shoot the damn basketball as well. Now on to pick number 30, the Washington Wizards here. This is the worst of OKC, Houston, and the Clippers pick. So, of course, OKC, who has had a little bit of a losing spree as of late. This pick probably still projects to be number 30 in the draft. And Washington, first of all, Michael Winger, Will Dawkins, they have a little bit of a type. They like these skinny, long, lengthy players. They drafted Will Riley, Alex Sarr, skinny, lengthy, long. Will Dawkins was a part of OKC when they drafted Ousmane Dieng. They draft a lot of small, slight, skinny players. And 30th overall, one that I think makes a lot of sense here is forward Dame Sarr out of Duke. This guy, I'm very intrigued by. Watching Duke, his impact offensively is not huge. In fact, it's kind of a slight negative impact. Not drastic, though. Their offensive rating just dips by about 2 points per 100 possessions with him on the court. A majority of his shots are just corner threes at this point, which, I mean, it's worked because they have Cam Boozer facilitating and drawing doubles and kicking it out to him, and he gets clean open looks, and he makes a decent number of them. But really the biggest thing, and this is the telltale sign on why you draft this guy, their defensive rating is incredulous with him on the court. They are 14 points per 100 possessions better defensively with him on than they are with him off, and he plays about 20 minutes per game. So I think it's actually a really meaningful sample size. It's not just, he plays 35 minutes, and then the 5 minutes he doesn't play per game, they just, end up allowing like a 7-2 run or something. It's not like that. It's half the game. They're way better defensively with him on. His screen nav is elite. I think he's one of the best defensive players in this entire draft, especially at the point of attack. There's a lot of similarities here to pre-draft Jayden McDaniels. And honestly, pre-draft Jayden McDaniels, he didn't have the screen navigation tape as much because at UW, they kind of allowed him to roam off the ball, block shots, help out of the corner, be more of a weak side defender. Dame Sarr's been tasked with guarding the ball, fighting through screens. He's long, he's mobile, he's fluid, he's agile. This is the type of guy who's going to return first-round value. I really hope he actually is a first-round pick. Now, he might get a little underdrafted because of some of the offensive limitations. I totally understand that. But this guy can flat-out guard. And while it's not just a stopper league, you can't just have one guy guarding the ball and just assume you're going to be okay with that. This guy's going to be impactful. And I really do think he's going to be underdrafted. I've been very impressed with his defensive tape so far, and I think his offensive game is solid enough to fit in around star talent. So for Washington, if this is your 7th or 8th or 9th guy moving forward, watch out. This team could be really special. Walking away with Cam Boozer and Dame Sarr in the first round here, I think is a very, very good outcome for the Wizards in this mock draft. Don't forget, I will be live all week long during the NBA trade deadline. Make sure to stop in, say hi, say what's up, and ask me your questions about the trade deadline. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. Come stop in that live stream, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.